Well, Volodymyr Zelenskyy has also called on Western allies to invest in Ukraine's armaments industry. Many innovative defense companies are being held back from scaling up by tight government budgets. Zelenskyy hopes that foreign investment could help to change that. DW's Max Zander discussed the issue with Ukrainian arms producers and sent us this report.
Few places showcase how the war has turbocharged Ukrainian ingenuity like defense startups. He used to be a lawyer who flew remote-controlled model planes as a hobby. Now his company develops and produces drones to fight Russia.
Currently, we are manufacturing the Shaklun drones, both the reconnaissance and the Shaklun K kamikaze models.
Their drone, Shaklun, can fly without a radio connection, on a pre-programmed course, and records onto a removable hard drive, almost invisible to the enemy. Their platform also comes in variants designed to intercept Russian drones as well as hit ground targets, at a price of roughly 8,000 euros per unit.
This section handles assembly and quality control. For example, this technician is testing and adjusting the settings of the drone. The finished products are then delivered to specific end users, such as military units or specific branches of the armed forces.
He says the firm employed just 5 people in 2022 when Russia launched its full-scale invasion. Now there are 170 people working here. Last year they produced nearly 1,200 drones. These are deep strike UAVs, a new product for the company. The innovation is clear and demand is growing, but meeting that demand is hard.
Many skilled workers were mobilized, so we've had to train new employees. Additionally, sourcing high-quality components, especially engines and regulators from abroad, that presents challenges. However, Ukrainian companies are increasingly producing components domestically, reducing our reliance on imports.
That's what Ukraine's president has called for. He wants the country's defense industry to play a bigger role in supplying the troops and for allies to invest to make it possible. This would make Ukraine less dependent on increasingly unpredictable partners like the US. Denmark last year became the first country to send Ukraine money rather than weapons. It financed the production of 18 self-propelled Bogdana howitzers. Other countries are now following that model. Just a few years ago, the Ukrainian defense industry was in a bad shape. Now, despite or because of the war, Ukraine is on its way to becoming a leader in Europe. Ukrainian armor has become the largest arms producer in Ukraine. Their portfolio includes armored vehicles, missiles, mortars, and of course, drones. And they could expand if the Ministry of Defense had the money to increase their orders, CEO Vladislav Belbas tells us.
Our demand is limited. Demand is what MOD procurement is, and other authorities also, is limited by their financial capacities. It's not limited by what they need on the battlefield. They need much more than they procure.
But budgets are tight, and orders only cover the coming 3 months. The Russians, on the other hand, are seemingly winning the arms production race, despite Ukraine's huge upscaling.
Russia is producing much greater figures in weapons and military equipments than the Western world, and is doing it lower cost. So they can utilize the same budgets for much bigger quantities of ammunition, weapons, etc. So we see that Western world is still going to increase, is still progressing very slowly. They have progress. They have like 10, 20, 30%. And in Ukraine, we have doubled, tripled every year the production capacities with relatively low expenditures.
Ukraine's ingenuity could solve some of its problems if it can scale up production. That could be helped by foreign investments, enabling the homegrown industry to play a greater part in defending the country.
All right, let's pick up some of these points with Mykola Bieliekskov. He's a research fellow at Ukraine's National Institute for Strategic Studies, which is part of the office of the Ukrainian president. He joins us from Kyiv. Welcome to DW. Can we start with your thoughts on that announcement from President Trump that his country will impose very severe tariffs on Russia in 50 days if there's no deal to stop the war?
It's a good change, because previously it was only like incentives for Russia, like good statements that we are skeptics towards further NATO enlargement and that Ukraine needs to surrender its territories. Now we see a shift in approach. Instead of only incentives and concessions to Russia, there is finally a talk of pressure. And the only problem whether or not it would be consistent, both in terms of sanctions and also in terms of weaponry production. But we clearly see that in last 6 months, we've seen an evolution in the Trump administration approach, and now there are disillusions with regard to Russia and translated into pressure vis-a-vis Russia.
That pressure from the United States, though, also puts pressure on your country, doesn't it? Because this is about a deal in 50 days to stop the war. Now, President Putin has laid out his terms for stopping the war, which have not changed in the course of the war. So it might be that Ukraine is forced to make the accommodation.
Well, recent Trump statement are meant to change Russian calculation, mean to force Russia to limit their maximalist demands. And there are certain things on which we can't make a compromise. When you ask to constrain your sovereignty, your free opportunity to choose your own future, it's unacceptable. The same is true with regards to security. Russia basically asks Ukraine to risk its future security, which is unacceptable. So there are certain things no one, whether it's Zelenskyy or someone else in power, is ready to negotiate. So it's up to Russia to limit their maximalist demands. That's the major rationale of recent Trump statement, I guess.
President Trump also announced that Ukraine would receive Patriot defensive weapon systems within days. No mention, though, of offensive weapons. Would you have liked President Trump to promise those?
Definitely, modern war requires both defensive and offensive capability. And actually, for good defense, you need to have offensive capability. You need to preempt Russia launching those strikes. Instead of intercepting arrows, it is said you need to destroy an archer, those who launch this missile. So definitely, the next step should be strengthening Ukrainian strike capability. But right now, strengthening Ukrainian anti-ballistic missile capability is very good starting point for the evolution of the Trump administration approach towards Russian-Ukrainian war.
Let's take a look at the medium to long term. President Zelenskyy has been calling on Western allies to fund Ukraine's domestic weapons industry. What does Ukraine see as its more urgent need at this point in the war? Bolstering weapons production capacity or getting those weapons from allies to defend itself?
Actually, we should pursue both approaches. Unfortunately, despite all the progress, Ukrainian domestic production can't meet all of the needs in all the capability niches, like anti-ballistic missile defense. Only US company Raytheon Technology does produce this kind of munition to the Patriot system. The same is true with ATACMS ballistic missiles or cruise missiles, though we have some indigenous capacities that also can be scaled up. So ideally, it should be both investing more in Ukrainian indigenous production, because right now we only finance maybe 1/3 of its capacity to produce UAVs, missiles, armor, also some munitions, but also providing Ukraine with vital stuff like interceptors to anti-ballistic missile defense.
All right, good talking to you. Thank you for joining us. Mykola Bieliekskov from Ukraine's National Institute for Strategic Studies.